the top of the show, me and Sharma were talking about Kyle Dubas, now former Leafs GM, releasing a statement this morning via Twitter. Not much in that, Sharms, to that statement that we can really take away from. And
no, I think he's being smart, taking the high road, not causing too many storms there, and just say, yeah, we're just moving on, and we're all going to be happy.
That's how it is.
And
we're
I'm
all
staring at my phone as we speak.
Yeah, exactly. Waiting for someone to call me. Let's bring in our next guest, Chris Johnston of NorthStar Bets. Chris, I'm assuming you've seen the statement from Kyle Dubas. Did you take away anything from it?
Not really. I mean, I'm certainly not surprised he would take the high road. There's maybe a little subtlety dropped in there that he might not have appreciated how much detail was shared by Brendan Shanahan when he spoke to reporters on Friday. But I don't think the statement in and of itself does a whole lot, other than it's a chance for Kyle and his family to thank the Leafs organization and the staff there for their time together. It was a long time for Kyle, 9 years, significant part of his working life spent in Toronto, but not a lot of revelatory stuff in there. I thought it was interesting that he called it onward, because it might hint at the fact that he is moving on a little quicker than maybe he himself had hinted last week, where he'd said publicly it was going to be Leafs GM or nothing next season. I'm not so sure that's now the case.
Sorry, at the end of his presser, or not the end of the presser, during his presser, Kyle Dubas, he did mention, you won't see me pop up elsewhere. He said, I can't put my family through that after this year. With the report of the Pittsburgh Penguins getting permission to speak with Dubas, do you believe that can change?
I think a lot can change in 8 days, right? It's been an unexpected turn, I would say, from even the time when Kyle made that statement. At that point in time, he and the Leafs were still talking about working together. He's still running meetings at the Leafs office as though he was going to be the general manager, and obviously that all changed. And so it's not a guarantee by any stretch that we will see him pop up. But I would think if you're in his shoes, you have to at least listen. And in this case, we do know the Penguins ownership group with Fenway Sports has requested the ability to talk to Kyle. I would be surprised if he didn't take a meeting and or a phone call and at least explore that opportunity and perhaps some others that may be out there for himself. I've asked him directly if anything had changed, and he's not indicated one way or the other. And I almost feel like by not confirming it, that's its own level of confirmation. And so, at this point in time, I would think that at minimum, he's going to be listening to offers. And, it'd be very interesting to see what the Penguins have to say, because the Penguins are believed to be in the final stages of their process. I think he's been their favorite all along, their desired candidate to come in and run their hockey operations organization. But it's really only now been a couple days they could even think about talking to him.
CJ, I always try and think of questions that maybe you haven't been asked, which is pretty impossible because you've been asked every question. You're on every media outlet you look at. But listen, okay, I'll try this one for you. You cover this team for many years through all sorts of different eras, from Nonis and Burke, maybe JFJ. I think you were there, perhaps.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit there, right?
Even Cliff Fletcher on an interim basis after.
I forgot about Cliff came back for I forgot all about that. Yeah, that was great. Where would you? Okay, when you use those as a baselines for the most crazy, strange eras of recent memory, where would you put this right now? Where would it rank right now as far as, I won't say dysfunction. We don't know this dysfunction just yet, but where would you put it as far as a crazy era, few weeks for Leaf history?
I put last week right near the top, just in terms of surprise level, in terms of all the machinations behind the scenes, and then ultimately with Brendan Shanahan's press conference on Friday afternoon. I mean, just the level of detail he went into with, where the contracts talks went with Kyle and why they didn't manifest itself with the agreement they were working towards. I mean, that was one of the stranger things. Now, I will remind you, though, that in the time frame that we're referencing, really, if you go back to just before Brendan Shanahan came in as president, it was a pretty turbulent time for the organization. You had Salute-gate back in those days. You had Peter Horacek come in and coach the team for half a season and question the team's give a shit meter. I will say that there have been some pretty chaotic times around the Leafs. If anything, what made last week stand out to me is we haven't seen that really since Brendan Shanahan took over. I think if there's one thing that his era has ushered in, is it really did feel like a plan. It felt methodical. It felt, for the most part, logical in terms of how decisions were reached, things that were going on. This almost felt like a return to some of what we used to see a little bit more in the past. And I don't expect it to carry on, quite honestly. I mean, even now, 4 or 5 days later, you get the feeling Kyle Dubas is moving on. He's put out his statement. I think the Leafs are moving on in terms of advancing their own GM search to replace him. And so it might only end up being a brief spike of craziness, but that was a crazy week. There's just no way around it.
You wrote recently about potential candidates for the role, and they are going to rush this thing. They have any choice but to rush it. Is that job still so alluring that you might prize another GM from his current job? Listen, as Leaf fans, we're arrogant. We think, we're the center of the universe, yada, yada, yada. But it is still a job that, if you get it right, you're going to be so revered and eulogized in this market for so many years. It must be really tempting, even now, for a lot of GMs.
Well, absolutely. I remember Brian Burke years ago when he got the job said, if you get it right here, they're going to name schools after you, something to that effect. And I think that to a certain degree is true. Now, this is also an era of social media. I think the job has gotten more difficult. I think, that's how I interpret even Kyle Dubas's comments talking about the strain on his family. It just how very public it is, how the kind of onslaught of information that jumps around. Obviously, with any GM in a kind of white hot market, you're going to have all range of opinions on the moves, both positive and negative. It's a difficult job. I think that's a big reason why the Leafs want someone with experience. They're prizing someone who's at least, been under the fire of the chair, who understands what it's like to be, so front and center, to have people like ourselves poking around in your business and breaking down your moves in real time and expressing opinions on those things. And so, yeah, I think it is certainly a prized job. It's an organization with, all kinds of luster. And I still think too, I mean, just look at the team. You would be, it's the rare GM job where you're stepping in the roster is pretty good, right? I mean, quite often when you're looking at a GM change, a team is bottomed right out. I mean, that's not where the Leafs are at. And so I think that there's a lot of appeal there. Plus the might of the organization, MLSE usually pays quite competitively if you compare to what people get paid in that organization versus those performing similar roles in another. So yeah, I think there's a lot of reason to think that there would be GMs who want it. But the other part of that is if they're locked into contracts, I'm not sure it can happen. I mean, the most obvious examples, Doug Armstrong, who's been mentioned quite prominently, works in St. Louis. It's not clear to me that he'll even be available to truly speak to the Leafs. There would have to be some permission granted from his owner, and I'm just not so sure that's coming.
CJ, I was so surprised by how thorough and detailed Shanahan was with the timeline of negotiations between him and Kyle Dubas. You don't really hear this from the Leafs. I mean, even dating back to the Lou days, you never heard anything coming out of Leafs. And he really aired it all out there. Do you think that could potentially have potential GMs who want to join this franchise think twice about joining because of that?
I don't think so. I mean, look, it might have given some pause. I mean, certainly that was a lot of the reaction I've got in real time from my sources, even around the league, is just everyone sort of, issuing a similar thought, like, wow, you usually, they really back the bus over them or what you have to say. I would suggest that probably Brendan Shanahan did that because he feels they don't have anything to hide and that he wanted to be as transparent as he could in sharing his side of things. I would love at some point in time, and I'm sure somewhere it might even be years down the road, we'll hear, Kyle Dubas's views on exactly what went down. I mean, a negotiation can be a rocky bit of business just by its nature. Usually sides take extreme ends of where they might land in terms of whether it's money or various other things they're negotiating. And then, the idea is you tend to work a little more towards the middle and find a deal there. You get the sense that these two were working at opposite ends and just never found a way to move in the right direction. And I think some distrust got into the process, which makes it very difficult to then complete a contract. And so, I guess that would open some eyes and certainly got lots of attention around the league, but it's still the Leafs. And I still think that this is one of the absolute top jobs you can have in all of hockey. And I think a lot of people view it that way, even if there are some, you might take a bullet or two from the side with the way things were handled.
Brad Treliving's name's mentioned, of course, front and center. He's available right now. Although the Flames say, yeah, he is, but he wouldn't be able to discuss anything around the draft. Mm-hmm. I mean, am I being naive here? I mean, they might say that, and he might say, sure, I won't say a word, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But come on. I mean, are they being serious?
Well, they are being serious. It's happened in the past. Years ago when Peter Chiarelli was hired in Boston out of the Ottawa organization, I think there was a similar kind of request. I mean, there's some precedent here. And, the one thing I'll say is that, first of all, in the Leafs case, they don't have a lot of draft picks. So it might be a little bit a moot point as it is. They've got a late first rounder and I believe a fifth and a sixth as at present. So it's not as though they're going to be calling a lot of prospects to the stage. And the second part of it is most GMs leave, their head of amateur scouting to run the draft in large part. I mean, obviously they're in the room, they have a voice, but GMs generally leave the picking to those that are immersed in it every day, that know, where they're at from the amateur side of things. And so I don't know that it's, other than it being sort of a little awkward, or you do wonder. I mean, of course he's got that intel, like you can't unknow what you already know, even if you're being told to. I don't know if it's as relevant, and with the Calgary Toronto comparison, just because they're not picking in the same range in the first round. And as I mentioned, the Leafs don't have that many picks to make as it is.
CJ, obviously this to-do list for this upcoming Leafs GM is so long, and it's daunting, really. You have Austin Matthews' contract, you have a decision on Marner and Nylander, maybe a discussion with John Tavares. You're looking at Sheldon Keefe, free agents, the draft is coming up. There's so much to do in such a limited amount of time. In your opinion, who do you think is the right man for this job, or woman?
I don't know if there's one. I do think if you put the parameters out there, though, that the Leafs have, it's hard to argue that it isn't Brad Treliving, just because he's still in prime years in terms of age. He has had so much relevant experience, nine seasons in Calgary, another Canadian market, and plus extensive history prior to that as assistant GM and in other lower roles. And he's available. I mean, at the end of the day, he's a bright guy who's been through it before, and you can. Other than maybe that little draft wrinkle, he's available to be hired tomorrow. And so I think that those things, likely point you to him. When you go down the list of experienced GMs that are still kind of what would be in prime working years, it's not a long one. And there are questions with each of them. I think that Brad Treliving has really been viewed as a front runner since this decision was made to part ways with Kyle Dubas. And I don't know where this will go. Maybe they end up ultimately including some people in the process that weren't former GMs, but among that pool of available candidates, if you put that main guardrail on it, I think Brad Treliving has the strongest chance here.
Quickly, CJ, we're just running short on time. I just want to know, have you heard anything about how the players have taken to the news of Kyle Dubas leaving?
Well, I think there's some mixed emotions, right? A lot of players were close with Kyle Dubas. He was in the organization for 9 years, and was involved in the Toronto Marlies before being Leafs GM. So, some of these guys have grown up with Dubas and were close with him. In fact, we heard it on their locker cleanout day at the beginning of last week. I mean, there was effusive praise for the GM, which you don't always get, and heartfelt praise. But at the end of the day, that players have a role to perform. They have contractual duties. They see teammates traded or not re-signed or what have you. And obviously staff comes and goes in the league. I mean, this is kind of part of doing business. I think it's interesting, though, to note that, when Brendan Shanahan phoned some of the top guys on the team, he let them know that he felt that they should keep the core forwards together entering next season. So as much as there is a lot of change in the air and there are big decisions to be made, at least right now, the top players on the team, without knowing who that general manager is, I think have some comfort or belief or understanding or thought that they're going to be around next season, and they'll get a chance to know the next GM that succeeds Kyle Dubas.
Man, it's going to be a fascinating next few weeks. CJ, I'm sure you're going to be at the heart of it. Thanks again for doing this.
My pleasure. Thank you.